Hi to all you patronisers of the Generally Spooky History podcast. I'm Aaron, Eilidh and Kieran's third wheel of the past decade. They've wrote me where's that script, Eilidh? I'm willingly and without monetary compensation here to tell you that you should definitely join the Generally Spooky History Patreon. Is that right? Okay. As I myself definitely do. It's great. I guess, probably. They blether, they read a book, they basically want us to pay for what they do every day of their lives anyway, which is actually a bit of a cheek now, come to think of it. But since the Generally Spooky History podcast is the greatest podcast of all time, you probably shouldn't miss out on all the bonus content they pour their hearts and souls into. Go on, they'll cry otherwise, and quite frankly, I just don't want to hear that.
Here's a quick word from our friends at the Wild for Scotland podcast.
Hello there, my name is Cathy Camleitner and I'm here to tell you about my podcast, Wild for Scotland. If you enjoy travelling, spending time outside, learning about nature, or simply relaxing to a good story, check out Wild for Scotland and join me for inspiring journeys from the cobbled streets of Edinburgh to the sandy beaches of the Western Isles. We go on scenic road trips up and down the country, hop from island to island, immerse ourselves in Scottish history, culture and landscapes, and meet passionate locals who love sharing their own little corners of Scotland. Think of it like story time for adults that inspires you to head out and learn about the world around you. So join me on the Wild for Scotland podcast. Listen now, wherever you get your podcasts.
I live here now.
That's your job. Eilidh's chief Odin petter.
Dad, now you.
He's mad at me too.
Pay the toll.
You gotta pay the toll. Welcome back to episode 2 of the Generally Spooky podcast. That's fucked that right up off the bat.
Welcome to the Generally Spooky History podcast. Season 6, episode 2. We're back. We came back for the rest of the season, even though recording the first episode was weird and hard. For some reason.
And for some people. I didn't find it that way.
No, but I did.
But we're here again. But I can't introduce the podcast, so, there's that. Together.
It's fine.
We get it together.
You showed up.
I showed up. That's what we do here. We show up to give you the long-form, spooky Scottish history content that you so crave.
Yes. We do the deep dive into Scotland's history, myths, and legends. And this season, we have an emphasis on the spook. Because my goal is to have this be our spookiest season ever.
Ooh.
Don't know if I said that last time.
I can't remember. So
I want this to be our spookiest season ever.
And I'm here for the ride, just like you are at home. Quick announcement before we dive into the good spooking. We got new merch designs up on the website.
We were Generally Spooky. Now we're Generally Spooky History. And we have Generally Spooky History merch.
Yes, we do.
And it's weird because some of it has our faces on it.
Yep.
And I don't know how to feel.
Not just pictures of our face. It's the drawings Eilidh did that are on the Instagram and stuff. And the new logo is on a bunch of merch, t-shirts and jumpers and stuff.
We have stickers.
And we have stickers. I really love the stickers.
I love stickers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to get all of them and I'm going to put them on all my journals because I have 3 different journals. They're all going to be on there. Might get a laptop case, put it on laptop case.
Yeah.
Great for water balls. Great for your face. Great.
Stick it to a surface near you.
There's one that's is it 15 inches?
Oh yeah, you can get a bumper sticker size.
Put it on the bonnet of your car.
On the bonnet.
It'll be great.
Put it across the windscreen, driver's side.
Obviously, for legal reasons, please don't do that.
On the inside, so you can see it.
We have merch. And it really supports the podcast when you buy it.
Yep. You can find it at generallyspooky.com.
Mm-hmm. If we kept in any of the barking, that's just Odin telling you to get merch.
Yep, he's excited about merch also.
He signed off on every piece himself. Rigorous vetting process. You should get some.
Which is funny because he hates the vet.
Oh, there's sweatshirts now. I really want a sweatshirt because it is cooling down here very quickly.
Yes, autumn is here.
Shivering at my desk last night. Need a sweatshirt.
Like you're in a Dickens novel.
Mm-hmm. Little orphan boy.
A little orphan Eilidh at her desk. Please buy merch so she can turn on the heating.
Because Kieran won't let me.
Check it out at generallyspooky.com.
Shall we try to begin?
Yes, I think we play some music and we start. So what are we talking about today?
Well, Kieran, have you heard of the term Jedburgh justice before?
Jedburgh justice.
Mhm.
I know Judy justice. Is it similar?
Do you mean Judge Judy?
That's her new show.
Oh. Thought you were just being a bit of a plank there. I was like, that's not her name. Her name is Judge Judy.
Yeah, but her show on, I think, Prime or something.
Which you would know
Judge
because we
Justice.
watched her relentlessly through the first year of uni.
Yeah, we did. Lord Judge Judy.
No, I'm not talking about Judge Judy or Justice League. No. I hadn't heard this term either until I was researching this episode. Jedburgh justice refers to the practice of hanging first and asking questions later.
That's not a good practice to have.
No, it is not.
Hanging first.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot going back after that.
Nope. Just don't worry about it. Hang first and then worry about it later.
Well, I guess there's a lot of, what do you call the person who's being accused of the crime? Is there a name for them? It's not the victim, it's the accused.
The defendant.
The defendant. Yes, a defendant couldn't respond to my questioning because he was dead.
Because his face was blue and his feet were still twitching.
So we're taking his lack of responses as proof of his guilt.
Treebeard from Lord of the Rings comes to mind, telling everyone to not be so fucking hasty.
Don't be hasty.
We're talking about the place that this phrase originated from today.
Well, you wanted to be spooky.
Mm-hmm.
That saying is up for some good spooking.
I've gone for it. We're talking about a jail this week.
Ooh.
Which is still something kind of new for us. We've only really talked about one jail before, Inverary Jail, which was super fun and a great episode if you want to listen and hear about some jail ghosts.
Jail ghosts.
We even talk about a ghost photo in that one.
There is a good ghost photo from that one.
Which we're also going to do this week.
Oh, who doesn't love a ghost photo?
Guys, this is a good episode.
I'm excited.
I'm pumped. This week, we are chatting about Jedburgh Castle Jail.
Ooh.
Now, what's the first thing you notice about what I just said, Kieran?
Castle Jail.
Precisely.
Is it a jail in a castle or a castle that's now a jail? Because I happen to know a jail in a castle is called a dungeon. Don't you know? Mr. Clever Clogs over here.
Mr. Historian.
Mr.
On the
History.
other side of the room.
A mystery. Mr. History.
Mr. History. That should be your Halloween costume this year.
Mr. History.
Yeah.
I like it.
Well, it's both. It was a castle, then it was a jail, and they kind of... We'll get there. But hence my interest in this as a topic, because it's both.
Yeah, that's very unusual. I don't know of many, if any, converted castle to jails.
Well, Inverness Castle was used as the court.
That's true. That's pretty close.
And it only recently stopped being so because they built a new courthouse.
And if you've got a nice wall around a castle, it does make sense to turn it into a jail.
Well, see, it wasn't as simple as that here.
Oh, really?
We'll get there later, but it wasn't as easy as just converting a pre-existing castle. But I guess let's just begin.
I think so. How far back are we going today?
As is tradition, we're going back to the 1100s. You know you love it.
Obviously.
You know you do.
That's why we're here.
Do you remember David I?
Is he David in the White Stag, David?
Yeah.
Then yes, I do.
I did not expect you to remember anything about him, if I'm quite honest. My hopes were not high.
Keep them there. Makes it easy for me to get wins.
Okay. King David I was the son of King Malcolm III and Queen Margaret, who became Saint Margaret. And we've talked about them a fair bit. King David is the Scottish monarch, like Kieran said, who appears in the legend of the White Stag.
Which was last season.
Yes. We have a whole episode about it if you're interested.
Mm-hmm.
Jedburgh Castle, just the castle, is not a jail yet, was originally built by King David,
Mm-hmm.
or on the orders of King David, because I doubt he built it brick by brick.
King David the bricklayer.
And at this point, it would have been Jeddart, or it's spelled Gethart, but I think it's pronounced Jeddart.
Not Jethard.
I don't think so, but I always get it wrong. So, can be anyone's guess.
We'll just throw something out there.
Jert Castle. The reason that Jedburgh needed a castle is largely down to its location, because Jedburgh is only about 10 miles from the Scotland-England border. Super duper close.
Yep.
That's really not very far at all.
I knew it was way down south.
Yeah, it's 10 miles from the border. And we've talked about the Scottish borders a lot because a lot of conflict tended to happen there because it's a border territory. And this is actually why Jeddart Justice came about, hanging first and asking questions later. It was a quick way to deliver justice to border reavers.
I was thinking about the border reavers.
Because they were robbing homes and land around the border and they would nab and run. So if you caught them, you didn't want to risk losing them again.
Yep.
So they just hanged them in Jedburgh. And even if they hadn't done anything, if they thought they did.
If it seems like they did a crime, then they do a hanging.
Better safe than sorry.
It's not good.
It's not good.
It's not good.
It's very dicey. But that's where the phrase comes from, and that's why it was in use. That's why people were doing it. During David's time, which was far earlier than the border reavers, or border reavers as we know them, the border was still moving and changing a bit between Scotland and England.
Yes.
It would be a while before we reach the border as we know it now, which I'm not going to get into here because we'd need a whole series about the Wars of Independence for that one. And, well, anyway. Jedburgh, though, has always been in a pretty hotly contested area because it's right by the border. So lots of danger, lots of conflict. David wanted a castle there to help defend the town from English invaders and to have a fortress base that they could keep the English out. I think at this point it was called Jedburgh Castle, like I said. And it looked different to how we know it today. A map from the time shows that Jedburgh was completely surrounded and enclosed like a fortress rather than just a castle. So it really hints at what life was like there at that time.
Yeah.
That they had to enclose the whole town to keep people safe.
Keep everyone inside the wall. Just think it's quite tough really to defend Scotland because they had to defend south from the English, west from the Lord of the Isles, north and east, from the Norwegians, and then the Danish and stuff as well. It's not the easiest. Because I was thinking, you'd want to build all your castles in the south. Oh, and the west. Oh, and the east. Oh, and then Orkney and Shetland weren't part of Scotland back then, so I guess you'd want some in the north too.
That's why you can't throw a stone here without hitting a castle.
Yep.
This is precisely why. It's not a big place. David died in 1153, and it was his grandson, Malcolm IV, who took the throne. We've talked about all that before. This is Malcolm the Maiden, if you remember. And he died when he was only 24, which is sad, but was very common, unfortunately. And he died at Jedburgh Castle.
Okay.
I don't know if we said that in the episode where we were talking about them, but he died there.
Can't remember if we mentioned that. Interesting. That could possibly lead to something spooky.
Maybe. When Malcolm died, it was his younger brother who got the crown, William the Lion. We talked about him too. He was a pretty significant Scottish ruler. He was the longest reigning monarch up until 1603, when the Scottish and English crowns were united. And he was nicknamed the Lion because he was the one who put the lion rampant on the Scottish royal standard.
That's a good way to get that nickname.
Not because he ate up the enemy.
No. Or he didn't have like a big mane or anything.
I don't think so. I think he was pretty stereotypical. He was described as your typical Scot. But it was because of the royal standard that he got the nickname.
Very nice. Good choice. Lion's a good one.
Right. William was a bit of an overreacher, a bit overconfident, and he got himself captured by the English when he tried to claim back some of the territory that Malcolm had conceded during his time as king.
Yep.
He didn't agree with Malcolm's choices and felt that it was Northumbria that they were fighting over, felt that that should be brought back into Scotland. Apparently, he was brought down into England as a prisoner with, quote, his feet shackled beneath the belly of his horse, unquote.
Oh, no.
Which is embarrassing.
That is embarrassing.
For a king.
Not very kingly.
Mm-mm.
Especially because that leads you to just spiveling round and being stuck underneath it. But your leg's still attached to the top of it.
To the door. Oh, no. Where's the See, no, they shouldn't be able to laugh like this at a king. It's not a good look.
No.
One of the conditions of William's returning to Scotland after being held prisoner was that several Scottish castles be handed over to the English king, who at this time was King Henry II, I believe.
Only the second. Ugh.
Right, so many Henrys. The Treaty of Falaise was drawn up and agreed to in Falaise, France, because that's where William ended up being held prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
They took him from England to France so that he was further away from Scotland, basically. And Jedburgh Castle was one of the castles that had to be handed over to Henry.
When it's that near the border, it makes it a prime target.
Yep, he could see the potential and the benefit to having it under English rule.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of the ones that had to be handed over. It was 5 castles in total that William had to give up. Do you want to have a guess at what they were? Or do I just tell you?
Jedburgh.
Yep.
That's one point on the board.
I know.
I've lost all of my words. No, I was going to say the one where the Legend of the Red Cap is, but I don't remember the name of the castle.
We're actually going to talk about that castle later.
Only that it's near the border.
And you didn't know that.
Also, no, I don't know much about the borders at all.
Okay, well, we've talked about 3 of them.
Edinburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Stirling.
Yes.
Inverary.
No.
I took a shot.
Yeah, Stirling and Edinburgh castles were part of this agreement.
Oh, goddamn.
The major ones.
That's a good trade.
The other one that we've talked about is Roxburgh Castle. We have an extra episode about that over on Patreon. It became Floors Castle later.
Ah, yes.
And Berwick Castle is the only one that we haven't discussed before.
Berwick, where the witch trials were.
Towards there, yeah.
Over that way.
The other side of the border, basically. So yeah, all pretty significant.
Yeah.
Especially Stirling and Edinburgh. They were major fortresses, strongholds, even back then. So to get King William back, Jedburgh Castle was taken over by the English, which must have been good for them, moving into a castle that they didn't have to build. It was ready-made.
Useful.
They just took it on.
Mm-hmm.
And the Scots were paying for the English garrisons that were moving into Scotland into these castles. That was another condition of William's release. So it didn't even cost them anything. The Scots were having to pay for their own occupation.
Well, you capture the king, you got a lot of leverage, don't you?
You can get whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
They got theirs.
But it's so unfair. I hate it.
Yeah. The injustice.
Mm-hmm.
It must be weird for the people who are living there. If, as you said, Jedburgh was kind of a castle town, that they're just farming, trading, cooking, living, doing all that stuff. And then one day like, oh, this is England now. But then they're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll just carry on farming and trading and cooking and living.
Well, to be honest, the country of Scotland didn't exist yet, really, because the border was still being created. It wasn't solid yet. And Scottishness wasn't the same as we understand it now.
Oh, that's true.
It wasn't a fully united country yet. So really, I'd imagine they were just looking at their immediate overlords and going, okay.
So I guess I pay my tax to you now.
Yeah, because once you start getting up to kings and things, they're so unreachable. You just have to make sure that you don't commit treason.
Yeah.
I guess.
I didn't vote for him.
Exactly, yeah. I might have that completely wrong, but that's the impression I have, that you wouldn't think too much about it. You would just think about how it impacts you immediately.
Yeah, so does that mean that like nationalism is kind of new?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting.
And it's morphed and changed a lot over the past like 30 years even. If you look at this is a whole other conversation, but you can look at the change in Scottish nationalism more recently, and it's a really interesting topic to examine and look at.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make notes of that for the blether, so come over to Patreon if you want to hear more about that. How do you spell Jedburgh?
Jedburgh. Burgh.
Ah, Burgh. Oh, like Edinburgh.
Yeah, the borough part.
Yeah. Not that it begins with an E.
No. But it doesn't start with a G either, so, you know.
Edinburgh.
Anyway. The English were only in Jedburgh Castle for about 15 years.
Okay.
So it is a long time.
That's a long time.
But in the scheme of things, it's not really a long time.
Not for our sake, but when your king dies at 24, it's quite a long time.
Yeah, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Richard, who was King Henry's son, was now King of England.
Yep, Dick. As he's known.
I thought you were just insulting me. I was like, I don't deserve it this time.
No,
sometimes I deserve it, because sometimes I'm a wee dick, but not this time.
I'm just saying, it's just his name.
He was pretty fixed on and committed to the Crusades.
Oh, yes.
Which were happening at the time. He's Richard Lionheart.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
If you know anything about like Robin Hood lore and stories, you've probably heard of King Richard. This is 1189. So the Crusades are underway. Richard came to terms with King William to exchange the 5 Scottish castles in exchange for cold, hard cash, baby.
I think we talked about that before. This rings a bell.
Yeah. This is just, we haven't talked about Jedburgh being part of it before. Yep. It was about 10,000 silver marks. That was the agreed upon exchange amount. I looked into how much this actually was, but the conversions are super confusing.
It's just so long ago, isn't it?
A mark was about, quote, 2/3 of a pound of silver, or 160 silver pennies, unquote.
Yeah, you'd have to like look into, I don't know, salaries, but there wouldn't have been salaries. So
it's 10,000 2/3 of a pound. So it's a lot of silver.
Yes.
It's a hell of a lot of money.
A lot of pennies.
Mm-hmm. But they deemed it worth it to get the castles back.
Absolutely.
And to have the English garrison sent home.
Because the Crusaders got a crusade. That's what I'm always saying.
So yeah, that was the exchange that took place, which we have talked about before.
Yes.
Now there's an interesting legend about something spooky that happened at Jedburgh Castle in the 1200s.
Okay.
And some of the facts from historical records don't exactly line up.
Mm-hmm.
I had a look at it. It's pretty close and kind of plausible, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway.
Please do.
It's fun.
Because we're getting spooky for spooky season.
We're not even in the spooky section yet.
That's how bumper packed this is.
How would the spooky section sound in an orchestra?
A lot of string instruments.
Because you have woodwind and strings. Right. The spooky section.
Yes.
Is that people just like rattling chains and moaning?
Yeah, I think so. Chains rattling, creaky hinges and creaky doors.
Like faking footsteps, like big boots on the ground. I'm actually first chain in the spooky section.
Oh, wow, that's coveted.
I trained at Juilliard for this.
For this honour.
Yeah. Anyway, Alexander III married his second wife, Yolande of Dreux, in 1285. And that's Dreux. So I've definitely said that wrong.
Okay.
And I believe Alexander III was William's son.
Yes.
I think. They actually got married on the 15th of October, 1285.
That's the day we got married.
Yes, that's also our wedding anniversary.
Not the year.
But no. We're not like 800 years old.
No, that would be a spooky twist.
Can you imagine if you were 800 years old and this is how little you can remember?
I mean, my memory's going to be pretty short by the time I'm 800 years old. So,
so it's accurate.
Yep.
Now, I read that they got married at Jedburgh Abbey, but the legend takes place at Jedburgh Castle.
Oh, okay.
And according to the story, that's where everyone gathered to celebrate the marriage.
I mean, you could have your reception at the castle.
Mm-hmm, like the party.
But the actual vows at the Jabby.
That was awful. But I kind of liked reading that they were just having this big party at the castle. Like some traditions just never die, because that still happens.
Absolutely.
Everyone's celebrating medieval style in the great castle, the great hall, celebrating the king's new marriage and a new Queen of Scotland, because the previous queen had died.
Mm-hmm.
It's a time to be jolly, but it didn't last.
Oh no.
The party being held to celebrate the marriage was a masked ball.
Very cool.
I'd love to go to one of them. I think it'd be super fun. So there's a little bit of intrigue. No one's completely sure who everyone else is. It's the perfect setup for a romance novel,
Yep.
you know? The party's well underway late into the evening when a late guest arrived at the hall of the castle.
Oh,
But they were dressed in a rather unusual costume,
it's the Grim Reaper.
very different to everyone else that was present.
They were dressed in all black.
They were dressed as a skeleton,
Oh,
and their costume basically consisted of really stark white bones painted onto a black veil that covered their whole body.
that's cool.
And as soon as everyone clocked them, everyone got the chills. They stopped celebrating because this person who walked in wasn't celebrating like everyone else. The late guest stepped forward into the room and everybody went quiet.
That's an entrance.
The party came to a complete standstill because everyone was watching this masked skeleton, wondering who the hell would dress like that to celebrate the king's wedding. This is weird.
It's a valid question.
King Alexander was enraged at the vision of this guest. He couldn't believe that someone had the nerve to turn up to their party celebrating a marriage dressed like that, with no desire to join in the celebrations or congratulate him and his new wife. He took it as an insult against Yolande, his new wife. Complete disrespect, and he wasn't happy about it. And I'm imagining he was probably pretty deep into his cups by this point, as any groom should be.
Yes, I'm sure he was a few meads down by that point.
You know? Alexander was so enraged at this mystery guest that he ordered his guards to put them to the sword where they stood.
I mean, I like his passion for his bride, but I don't think having a murder in the middle of the hall would particularly help.
He was committed.
Everyone get back to carry on the good times. We're just going to mop this up real quick.
Maybe it was more commonplace then.
Maybe.
Everyone's just used to it.
It's just normal.
So the guards follow the orders that they've been given, obviously. They step forward with their large spears and stabbed at the skeleton guest's black veil. Lots of sharp blades stabbing straight through this person. There's no way they would have survived this attack. They were getting it from all sides. Except there was no one under the veil.
Ooh.
The spears stabbed through the thin fabric, but made contact with nothing underneath. Just this awful spectre of this skeleton that continued to stare firmly at Alexander and his new wife without speaking.
You think you were having a bad time before? Oh, no.
So the party never recovered, obviously.
Hard to bounce back from.
Everyone left, and the cheer completely died. And all of the guests started whispering about the appearance of the skeleton and what it meant. Because everyone took it as a really bad omen.
It's not good luck. You know?
Whispers started going around that this was an omen of death. But they didn't know exactly what it meant. Spooky.
Spooky.
It gets spookier.
Oh.
It was only a few months later, in March 1286, that Alexander and his horse were on a stormy ride to see Yolande through the night on an ill-advised journey. And he went over a cliff and died.
Over a cliff?
In Fife.
Oh, no. That's not good.
And his death kickstarted, basically the Wars of Independence, kickstarted a whole mess of problems for Scotland and the succession of the throne.
I see.
So he died very soon after this supposed apparition at his wedding party.
How spooky.
Right?
He whistled.
I will say that this story seems to have been recorded in the 1500s, so not at the time. It was written in the Holland's Head Chronicles from 1577, from what I can tell.
Yep.
Which poses some problems because it's being written after the fact.
300 years after the fact.
But the Holland's Head Chronicles are a super important piece of literature. Apparently they inspired Shakespeare among lots of other classic writers. So they're a big deal. They're well known. And this story supposedly inspired Edgar Allan Poe to write The Mask of Red Death in 1842.
Fun.
Have you heard of that one?
I have not.
I hadn't read it in a long, long time. And frankly, I'm surprised it's taken us this long to get to Edgar Allan Poe on this podcast.
Yeah, it seems very fitting.
Do you want me to give you the rundown of the story?
Yes, please. Unless I just heard it, I suppose.
Well, kind of. He's used it as inspiration to write his own version. In his story, a man called Prince Prospero has shut himself up in an abbey trying to escape a plague that's hit his country called the Red Death. And he's walled himself in with every luxury, with all of his friends and his staff, while his people are dying, and he's just leaving them to it.
No good.
There's this grandfather clock in his chambers that has this really terrible chime that's so pervasive it startles and frightens and freezes everyone that he has in his chambers. It like rattles through them all.
Yep.
Why are you laughing?
Who would have that clock? Like, why would you keep that?
He's throwing a great masquerade ball. And in the middle, a cloaked and terrible figure interrupts everything. And everyone's really scared of him, all the guests. Because it seems like this guest has turned up in a masked costume inspired by the Red Death.
Oh.
So everyone's like, what the hell? It's an actual plague outside. You can't dress like that and come in here.
So that's in poor taste. We're trying to pretend that's not happening to the poor people.
And the prince has made a big show of keeping Red Death outside the walls, and he's come in. So the prince becomes completely enraged, tries to stab the guest, and you'll need to read the story to see how it ends.
The tease. The tease.
It's great. I recommend you read it. And I actually discovered this legend about King Alexander on a website that's run by Prince Michael of Greece. Like the actual Prince Michael of Greece.
The actual...
He writes about like mysteries and the royals and history and all kinds of stuff.
Well, that's delightful.
I was so surprised.
That is surprising. It's good to have a hobby.
Yeah. I just wasn't expecting it.
No, not expecting that at all.
So like I said, Alexander's death meant there was a huge rammy over the throne, lots of conflict between Scotland and England that went on for years. And we don't have time to get into it here. Ultimately, the English became involved in all of this, and they took back Jedburgh Castle in 1246.
Okay. So that's quite funny. Scotland bought it back and then lost it to the people they bought it from.
Yep.
Makes sense. To somebody,
Does
maybe.
Does it?
Does it?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure.
Now, how long did the English hold the castle?
8 months.
8 months.
8 months.
But that was so confident.
8 months.
The English held it for almost 200 years.
Ah, see, it was going to be obscenely short or obscenely long. I chose poorly.
It was 200 years. It was a very long time.
Oh, well, I was close.
No, you weren't.
I was close.
That's a lie you just told.
It's an
Barefaced lie.
exceptionally good answer.
200 years. I was really surprised by this, that they held it for such a long time. Eventually, in 1409, the Scots managed to take back the castle. And because it had caused them so much grief, they decided to knock the whole thing down.
I mean, it's an expensive castle to hold for the Scottish.
Get rid of it. We don't want to have to defend it anymore. We want rid of the bloody thing. We don't want the English to have it. We're going to demolish it.
It's a more extreme version of the thing Robert the Bruce did, I think, when he would destroy all the battlements of a castle.
Yeah. Destroy the defensive structures. And sometimes just the whole thing. Again, we'd need to get into the Wars of Independence for that.
Yeah, it just did something. I think it happened at Stirling. We mentioned it, the Stirling Castle episode.
So it was somewhat common practice. And it does make sense because if you have to defend all of these castles, you're splitting your forces, which ultimately makes you weaker.
Yep.
Because you don't have a unified force when you need them.
Yeah.
So I get it. Even though the Scots had taken the castle, Jedburgh continued being a target for English attack. After this, the English burned down the town of Jedburgh several times.
Several times?
In 1410 and then again in 1416, and then again in 1464, and then again in 1523.
Oh, man, that's tough. But if my home got burned down, I'd want to rebuild it. So I can't argue.
Right?
It's just a bit brutal.
And I feel like there's enough time between them that you'd be like, it can't happen again.
It could never happen twice. It could never happen 3 times.
Like last one, like 80 years.
Well, especially because that would have been something that happened to your like great-great-grandparents.
Or like a once-in-a-lifetime storm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just kept getting burned down.
Just keeps happening.
All the time. When the castle was taken back in 1409, it was taken by a force led by James Douglas, who was the 7th Earl of Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about the Douglases before. Very powerful family, particularly in the borders.
Mm-hmm.
That was the seat of their power.
Not good at keeping pets.
Why weren't they good at keeping pets, Kieran?
Well, they just kept losing their dogs. They were Douglas.
I just wanted to hear you say it.
Thanks. I liked your face of what? Oh, I see.
You've seen it before. Yeah, the Douglases, their seat of power was down in the south, but they controlled like huge portions of Scotland. They had a lot of power. That's just where they were focused.
Powerful family.
Yeah. Now, this is the same James Douglas who gained all of his power after his great nephews were killed at the Black Dinner at Edinburgh Castle.
I feel the Douglases never come across well.
Well, in the case of the Black Dinner, they were the injured party.
Oh, that's a bit better.
That wasn't their fault. And then later, it's a Douglas who's thrown out of
Well, that's what I was thinking.
a window at Stirling.
Yeah, because there's the Douglas Garden at Stirling Castle. That's my main 2 memories of the Douglas from this podcast.
But their power just brought them into conflict with the king.
Well,
because they held so much of it.
Yeah, happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was this James Douglas. He became Earl when his great nephew, William Douglas, was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a bit sus.
Yeah.
But he's the one who took back Jedburgh Castle.
Oh, well, fair enough. Taking it back.
Backpack.
From the English.
In 1544, the Earl of Hertford, who was an English earl, ordered the town of Jedburgh to be burnt down.
Yes, yep. Mm-hmm.
He was a pretty major figure in England. His sister was Jane Seymour, who was one of Henry VIII's wives. And he was warden of the Scottish Marches for a while, so held a lot of power in this area. He pillaged Edinburgh the same year he attacked Jedburgh, and this was all part of the rough wooing.
Ah, yes, you mentioned before.
Because King Henry was having a fit that his son wasn't going to marry Queen Mary. He was trying to make it happen. The Earl of Hertford also fought at the Battle of Pinkie, which we've talked about a little bit. So he was all over the place.
That's an important figure, a keystone to a lot of these stories.
In the end, he was actually imprisoned at the Tower of London.
Oh,
and
wow.
He was later executed for committing treason.
Oh, not a good end.
So he did all of that and he still got his head lopped off.
That's Henry VIII for you.
Seems like it was very hard to stay alive in the past.
I mean, for now, yeah, I think so. I wouldn't be alive just now if I was alive back then.
No, probably not.
Probably not.
Unless you were 800 years old.
Unless I was 800 years old.
So, there's no more Jedburgh Castle, if you remember.
Yes, it has been destroyed, burned down, captured, destroyed, and burned down again.
As of 1409, there is no castle there. Instead of there being a castle, 6 large houses had been built in Jedburgh that were supposed to act as protection for the town. So instead of one big fortress, you have these smaller defensive bases, I guess. One of these is known as Mary Queen of Scots' house because she stayed there for a time.
She stayed everywhere for a time.
Here it seems like she really did. We talked about this in our episode about her, but she travelled to visit the Earl of Bothwell at Hermitage Castle because he was really ill.
Yes.
In 1566. But then she became really ill herself when she was returning home. She made it back to Jedburgh, but she had to stay in this house while she recovered.
Yeah, Mary Queen of Scots actually almost died here from flu, so yeah, it's pretty legit.
We're kind of a big deal.
It's kind of important, no big deal.
Now, the castle you mentioned earlier with all the red caps.
Yes.
is Hermitage Castle.
That's Hermitage Castle, isn't it?
Looks terrifying from the outside. It's a really imposing building. Highly recommend you look it up. It's very spooky.
If you go and visit, don't let a red cap drop a stone on your head.
No.
Wear a helmet. Safety helmet.
Carry some iron with you.
Oh, good idea. Good idea.
You can still visit Mary Queen of Scots' house in Jedburgh. It's a museum. It actually has a left-handed staircase, which is pretty much what it sounds like. Apparently Sir Andrew Kerr returned from the Battle of Flodden in 1513. One of the few, because we only ever seem to talk about the people who died at the Battle of Flodden.
Yes.
And he had this house built with his fortune, with a left-handed turnpike stair.
Now, they're always right-handed, so it spirals up to the right.
Yeah, a turnpike stair is helical, so it spins round on itself.
Good word.
Kerr was left-handed.
I wondered.
So he wanted one that spun in the direction that would give him the advantage if anyone ever broke into the house or attacked him. And he actually had all of his men trained so they could fight left-handed too.
Well, that's what I was about to say. It's all very good if you're left-handed, so you can defend it. But what about everyone else?
Yeah, he made them train so that they could fight with their left hand.
Interesting.
So anyone who attacked that was right-handed, the stair wouldn't work for them, basically. I thought it was super interesting.
That is super interesting, but it's completely flawed in my mind, because everyone who's attacking who's right-handed does have an advantage, because normally they don't when it's a right turn, because you can't swing your sword or you hit the middle. But if it's spiraling up the other way, you can swing your sword round. It's just, if you're left-handed, they can also swing their sword round.
Well, I'm assuming it's left-handed to favour the defenders. Surely.
It means they have the advantage, but it means the attackers also have an advantage.
Oh, I'm confused. I can't imagine these things in my head, so I'm lost already. I think it's interesting.
It's very interesting. It just seems like this. It's like the spotlight effect. He's like, oh, this would be best for me. I'm like, oh, but then it's worse for your men and better for the attackers. So overall, you've averaged way down in terms of defense.
Okay, well, I thought it was a pretty cool feature of the house.
It's still interesting. I'm not blaming you for designing it.
Oh, thank you. You're so kind. Apparently, Mary Queen of Scots' house is haunted.
Who by?
Well, Mary Queen of Scots was there, so obviously. People have reported smelling flowers in rooms where there aren't any, and in the room that was lived in by Mary herself. They've heard mysterious noises, including the rustling of a skirt. Now, any other season, I might have poo-pooed that, but that happened at Pool House when we went, so I'm not as sceptical as I maybe once would have been.
Everyone's a skeptic till it happens to them, apart from me. Still a skeptic.
It kills me. It actually kills me. I don't get it. Oh, you should tell them what you said to me when we were staying at that hotel in Bankery.
What did I say?
We were going down to dinner and were we leaving? And I was wearing my black skirt going down the stairs.
Oh yeah, you're saying...
You don't even remember saying it. You completely fucked me up. You don't even remember.
Eilidh had a black skirt on and going down the stairs saying, oh, it's really like swooshy. And then you went round through a doorway. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of like the swoosh I saw. And then you almost died.
No, you said it's like the swoosh I saw. It was a skirt just like that one. That's so specific. It's a kind of chiffony pleated skirt. Super specific. Really creeped me out that you just say that so off the cuff. Don't give a shit. Say whatever. And it messed me up. And you did not care.
Nope. I've already forgotten. It's just me being a charmer all over.
I'm enraged.
Feminine rage.
I'm going to get my guards to stab you.
In the hall for ruining everyone's good time.
That's what I'm going to do. Going to enlist Odin. I'm going to get him a huge big, I guess it is just a spear, but I'm thinking very, like a
lance?
No, we have pike men in strategy games. One of them. And just go.
Gonna pike me.
Yeah.
I'll rub his belly. He'll be butter in my hands.
There was no more Jedburgh Castle until 1820.
That's a long time to bother rebuilding it. 400 years?
Yeah. More than that.
Man alive.
So we're jumping quite far forward this
Yeah.
episode. In 1820, the site of Jedburgh Castle was cleared completely. Up until this point, the land had been referred to as Gallows Hill, and it's where executions used to happen.
Very nice.
So it's never been a pleasant place.
It's not the nicest bit. It's not where I build a house.
Well, construction started on what would become Jedburgh Castle Jail.
Interesting.
Now, this is confusing initially when you look at the place. The castle was completely demolished.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't exist anymore. There was nothing there. They could have built it however they wanted. But the jail that was built there was built in the style of a castle.
Why, do you know?
I think it's part of the style of jail that it would become, to do with the method of trying to reform people, which I'll talk about in a minute.
Okay.
But they didn't convert the castle. They built a new one to make it a jail. It was purpose-built.
Interesting. It's an odd choice to me, because it seems like it'd be a lot more expensive to build a castle that's a jail than to just build a jail, especially in the 1800s, when, it wasn't castle or thatched house.
Well, we can talk about it.
Yeah, okay.
When I say the words Victorian prison to you, what do you imagine?
For some reason, I always imagine those stepping devices for torture, and then if you're in the poor house,
Hard labor.
hard labor. That's what I always think of.
Yeah.
And just unsanitary, 100 people in a 1 meter square room. Maybe exaggerating a little bit, but that kind of vibe.
Yeah. So you're thinking the right way. They were pretty terrible. Even before Victorian era, up until the Victorian era. In the Victorian era, they were just Victorian. They were terrible. Hard labor, like I said, solitude eventually.
Oh yeah.
Threat of disease all of the time. They weren't clean. There was no ventilation for a good amount of time.
Grim.
So no air, and that's why disease was so rampant, because there was no fresh air.
No fresh air, no
dirty
sanitation.
Water. And you'd get all this if you were lucky enough not to be transported or just killed.
Those were the lucky ones. It's not good.
A bit before the Victorian era, some thinkers had started putting their minds to how prison conditions could be improved upon. Enter John Howard.
John Howard.
In the late 1700s. Howard became Bedfordshire's High Sheriff in 1773.
Okay.
So going back a little bit before the jail was built. And he took his role very seriously. He decided to visit the prisons that he was now effectively in charge of. And he was absolutely horrified by what he found. As he should have been, because they were fucking terrible.
Yeah. I feel any rational person who wasn't just used to it would be pretty shocked.
They were awful. Even the things that I was surprised. And I live in Merck.
What did he see?
He unearthed a system that basically only benefited the jailers. Because a jailer, once someone was made a jailer, they could basically run a jail however they wanted.
Okay.
There was no regulation. There was no state control of prisons.
Yeah.
And they had to try to make their own living. So bribery was rampant. And corruption was just how the job worked. Families would have to pay to have their loved ones released, even after they had served their sentence. And if they couldn't pay, they had to stay.
Ooh. Yeah, it's if their income comes from running the jail, what could possibly go wrong?
This is why prisons for profit is wrong.
Yeah, because that's still a thing, isn't it?
In the US is, yes.
Grim.
It's wrong.
It is wrong.
Prisoners would also have to pay for their stay in prison for the basics that they needed, like bedding.
Oh my God.
They would have to pay a daily rate for the bedding they were using in prison.
That's not good. That's not good at all.
And on top of that, you have all the terrible conditions.
Yeah.
So many people to cells. Everyone has disease. No one's being fed properly. No one gets daylight. All of that on top of this corruption.
So I can see the High Sheriff coming in and going, "What are you doing?"
He discovered all of this happening in Bedford.
Mhm.
This is one prison initially. So he decided he had to look a bit deeper. He didn't want this to continue. He needed to visit other prisons to see how it should be run so he could get some recommendations and then come back and change everything about Bedford.
It's very smart.
It's very scientific
Mhm.
rather than weighing in on something he feels he doesn't know well enough.
Yeah.
But when he travelled across England and Wales, he saw that everywhere operated the same, or even worse.
Yeah.
He was disgusted. He visited cells, dungeons, torture chambers, because remember, this is the mid-1700s.
Yep.
And in 1755, he wrote, Ely Jail was the property of the bishop, and because of the insecurity of the old prison, the jailer chained the victims down on their backs on the floor, across several iron bars, with an iron collar with spikes about their necks, and a heavy iron bar over their legs.
Oh my Christ.
Mhm.
That is brutal.
Mhm.
That was the bishop doing that.
The bishop owned the jail,
Oh.
and it was in such bad condition because he hadn't done any repairs or maintenance
Yeah.
that the jailer just chained people to the floor
Bleh.
rather than having cells that held them in.
Yeah. Oh my days, that is horrendous.
Yep.
And because you know it's going to be for like stealing some bread.
Yeah.
Or like the full spectrum. Obviously, there will be terrible people in there getting that punishment. But you know there's going to be not terrible people.
Yeah. When you imagine a cartoonishly terrible prison, I feel like this is what you imagine.
Yes.
Except this actually happened.
Yeah.
So Howard encountered all of this.
Mm-hmm.
He widened his net even further because he's unearthed this even bigger system of corruption and ill treatment that he
Mhm.
didn't really appreciate existed. So he started traveling further and doing more research into prisons, and he traveled all over the place. He went to Scotland and Ireland, so traveled throughout the whole UK,
Mm-hmm.
eventually as far as Russia.
Wow.
He visited loads of countries, and he actually became pretty well known for exposing the terrible treatment of prisoners, so much so that he had to start disguising himself to be allowed to enter because governments didn't want him seeing what they were actually like because it looked bad on them.
That's insane.
So he had to start hiding himself to see what these prisons were actually doing.
Oh my God. He's like Gordon Ramsay in Kitchen Nightmares.
Is that fair? John Howard, is that fair? I don't think so.
Don't think it's fair.
His ideas weren't perfect by any means. Howard advocated for better conditions for prisoners, but it's not ethical and fair as we would see it today. It's just better than what was there when he found it.
You have to take every step on the ladder
Yeah.
to get better.
I'm not saying that everything he did was great,
No.
to be clear. He was very much for reformation rather than punishment,
Mm-hmm.
which was a completely new concept. But to him, this meant solitary confinement, complete silence,
Yes.
hard labor, and a big emphasis on religious
Religion.
instruction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you can see the issues.
Yep. I take it over being chained to the floor with an iron metal collar.
Well, yeah, it's better,
Sorry, iron spiked collar.
I guess. But
Yeah.
this was his concept of what prison should be
Mm-hmm.
and how to reform the criminal to make them a better person and to bring them back to God.
Yes. Yes.
He actually died after a prison visit in Ukraine
Oh, yeah.
in 1790. He contracted typhus
Oh,
after his visit and died in Ukraine and was buried there.
that's ironic. 35 years after his book, though. That's pretty good going, just in terms of lifespan.
After his book?
Did you say he published a book in 1755? Did I make...
Oh, he didn't... I'm lost now. I'm not sure if it was a book he wrote. He wrote recommendations and things to Parliament
Mm.
to change law. I think he might have written a book about prison conditions. I need to check.
Maybe I just lied.
I've lost... No, because he did write a lot during his
Mhm.
lifetime. That's how we know how he felt and how he thought. I'm just not sure if it was a book or if it was like legal documents to Parliament.
Got you. Well, all I meant is this was obviously like his life's work. Like he
Yeah.
spent decades doing this.
Yeah, big time. And he had a wife and children, and
Mhm.
he continued doing this still.
Do you think he like tested out stuff on his kids? Right, let's play jail time.
I mean, I hope not, for their sake. But unfortunately, he kind of died without seeing the true fruition of his work, which we're about to get to. But he was the first civilian to be honoured with a statue in St. Paul's Cathedral.
That's nice.
So there you go.
There you
Because
go.
he wasn't Sir John Howard
Mhm.
or anything. In 1799, what?
He was a jailer, not a surgeon.
What?
Sir John.
Oh, my God. That was so dumb, I didn't get it.
Well,
I
thank
didn't
you.
get it.
That's my sweet spot.
Okay, I'll try that again.
Mhm.
In 1799, the Penitentiary Act passed, which was a big deal. It introduced a policy of state prisons for the first time
Okay.
and, quote, recommended imprisonment as an alternative sentence to death or transportation, unquote. Because this was the time where if you committed theft, you could be shipped off to Australia or America.
Yep.
Because, you know, we don't care about the people who already live there. You know, the native peoples. We're just going to send all of our criminals.
I know. All the people we don't want to deal with, we'll just send them away.
Even though for a lot of them, they're stealing because the quality of life is so bad.
Yeah.
There's nothing they could do.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Oh, really grinds my gears.
It's not good.
It would be a while before new prisons were built to meet this act.
Mm-hmm.
But a network and a plan was developed with this Penitentiary Act that would improve prisons overall.
Mm-hmm.
Just, it's slow.
Well, it's a huge overhaul.
Yeah.
Especially when these private jailers are profiting off their corruption. They won't really be keen to be like, yeah, great, let's make things better for prisoners. I'm all for that, obviously.
Well, because I know it's not perfect, but the thinking here was if prisons were under the charge of the government, then they would have to be held to standards.
Mhm.
And then the government would be accountable for making sure the prisons were at this standard.
I think it makes sense.
And there was another influential prison reformer a little bit after John Howard called Elizabeth Fry,
Mhm.
who advocated more specifically for female prisoners and prisoner reform through education.
Sounds like a good idea.
So I wanted to mention her while we're talking about John Howard because she was just as important.
Yep.
Jedburgh Castle Jail was built as one of the Howard Reform jails in 1823.
Yes, I was thinking that.
Yes.
Just 24 years later.
But it was specifically called a Howard Reform jail.
That's interesting.
This was a type of jail that kind of embraced all of Howard's thoughts about what prison reformation should look like.
Mm-hmm.
So prisoners were held in their own cells on their own, which
I
hadn't
see.
happened before. But also came with all the like bad ideas he had that he thought were good ideas,
Yeah.
because hard labor was a thing. But while you were doing your hard labor, you did it in silence. You were always in silence. If you were being punished, you might be put into a cell with no light.
It's a step in the right direction, but still not good.
No. Heavy emphasis on religion and turning to God and reforming yourself. But because of the types of treatment, I guess, they were using, a lot of prisoners went mad.
Yeah, I think I go mad not being able to speak.
Don't speak, you're not spoken to.
Mhm.
You're left entirely alone in a small cell. If you do anything wrong, you don't even have light anymore to see. You're just in the dark by yourself in silence.
It's going to drive you mad.
Yes. But, you know, they had things like ventilation,
Mm-hmm.
which they hadn't had before. And when they were taken to prison, if someone was taken to prison, they were cleaned before they were put in their cell.
Good.
I think they had specific uniforms that they were given that were clean. Things like that. And I know it's basic stuff, but that wasn't done before.
No, you get some privacy in your cell.
Yeah.
But perhaps too much, but it would still be welcome compared to...
You're running far less of a risk of being killed by another inmate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's impossible, but you know, you can see the good, but you can also see the terrible, terrible flaws.
Yes. So was the castle aspect, was it supposed to like frighten the prisoners, and was it supposed to like be imposing
yes.
and stuff?
That's why they went for that style.
To make them cower somewhat.
To make you repent,
Yeah.
basically. It's like a lot of the penitentiaries that you see in the US did the same thing. They're built in the style of castles or churches
Mm-hmm.
to invoke a sense of God and just repentance for what you had done,
Yeah.
and to put you off committing crime because you're looking at this big castle jail and you don't want to be there.
Mm-hmm. Something religions love. Really big building.
Yeah. So it seems like an awful lot of extra effort, but that was why they went for that style.
It does make more sense. That does make more sense. Especially because I've seen pictures of the jail and it's quite striking to look at.
Well, if I told you that they had just turned a castle that was there already into a jail, you would believe me.
I would indeed.
But it was not the case.
Not so. They built a new castle.
Mm-hmm. Now, they had all of this reform and better conditions for prisoners, but executions were still happening. Because you could be executed for a frightening number of crimes.
Yeah.
The death penalty wasn't abolished in the UK until 1965.
Ooh.
Which is scarily recent.
Yep.
And the last person was hanged in Scotland in 1963.
So late.
Yep.
I saw a map of Europe, the continent, and with each country and when their last execution was with the date underneath it. Super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The latest ones were 1997.
Yeah.
Which is a bit yeashed.
I can't. This is probably a conversation to have in more depth. But for me, being from Scotland, I cannot imagine a justice system where you can be put to death for anything.
No.
And I know it's still a thing in the US. I know it's highly contested and people have very strong feelings about it. Valid, but I just can't imagine it actually being a thing, actually being sentenced to hang for something.
Mm-hmm.
That was happening in the 60s?
Doesn't make sense.
It was in Scotland, that's 6 years before the moon landing. What the hell?
Yeah, these things just don't. They don't.
What?
They don't merge, do they?
No.
Strange.
Mm-hmm. Jedburgh Castle Jail operated from 1823 until 1886.
That's not that long to get out of a brand new castle.
Not really.
Would you get your ROI on that?
60 years.
60 years?
But it was closed and all the prisoners were moved to Edinburgh.
Oh.
Because it's very similar to Inverary Jail. It was closed Inverary Jail was closed in 1889.
Mm-hmm.
So around the same time. And it's because prisoners were being moved to bigger jails because it was more cost efficient than having lots of smaller ones.
Mm-hmm.
So it cost too much.
And your satellite jails.
Yeah.
Which is funny because presumably the jail they got shipped to in Edinburgh has also closed.
Probably by now, but I couldn't be sure. I would need to look into it. But yeah, that's why it was shut. But yeah, it operated for quite a long time. I think changes were made during the prison's lifetime to keep up with the laws that were coming out. So laws were released that women had to be held separately.
Oh, yeah.
So they changed the layout of one of the cell blocks to accommodate for that. There used to be a wall that separated 2 rows of cells.
Oh, interesting.
So women were on one side and I think debtors were on the other. Because debtors weren't the hardened criminals.
Yep.
So they kept them together. Children were kept at Jedburgh Castle Jail. There's records of, I think, one boy who was charged with stealing food, potatoes or bread. I can't remember. He was held there.
Jailing kids is never a good thing, is it?
No, can't be doing that.
No.
Very, very similar to Inverary Jail. It was the way of things at the time, unfortunately.
Yeast.
In 1964 or 68, I've seen both.
Okay.
The jail was restored to what it would have looked like in 1820, and it was open to the public.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. I thought maybe it had a time of being shut. Just closed completely.
Yeah, for about 100 years.
Did you say 1960? Oh, I thought you said 1860.
No, apologies. 1964 or 68.
Ah, okay. I'm with you. That makes sense.
So it was closed for a long time, and I'm assuming abandoned.
Yeah, presumably, or storage or something, maybe.
But from the 1960s, around the same time the last execution happened in Scotland, you could go visit Jedburgh Castle Jail.
Hooray!
Where they used to have executions. One thing I thought was quite interesting was you can go visit now, obviously, and there's the museum. But part of the museum is the jailer's house, because they used to live on site.
Ah, interesting. Kind of like the governor.
Mm-hmm. And usually it'd be the jailer, and because it's 1800s, it'd be the jailer and his wife.
Yeah, well, it's the wife and family, isn't it?
And the jailer would be in charge, and the wife would usually be in charge of all the women, all the female prisoners, and their care.
That's in The Handmaid's... No, not The Handmaid's Tale. Another...
Can he find it?
Oh, something Grey. Alias Grey.
The book's right there.
Oh, yeah.
Alias Grace.
So close.
One of my favourite books. Yeah, you have the governor and the matron.
Yeah, because Alias Grace, or the main character, she goes up to the governor's house to see his wife and do things and stuff.
So yeah, you're familiar with this concept.
Yep.
What I did hear in one of the videos I watched about Jedburgh Castle Jail is that the jailer had an assistant, but they paid the assistant out of their own salary.
Now that's interesting.
So I feel like that's just a breeding ground for like corruption and exploitation, because you would want to keep as much of the money for yourself.
It's not a good incentive to pay them well.
No, because they're getting paid out of your pay packet.
But you could just not have one, I guess. Would be the argument. It's unusual though, isn't it?
Yeah, just a little side note there. It's not crucial.
So there was a jailer's house.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's just like gradually smaller and smaller houses? So then there's the jailer's assistant's house. And if it's paid out of your own pocket, the jailer's assistant could hire his own assistant.
Who lives in a shack.
Yeah.
On the outside of the
Who lives
castle.
in a shack, who hires an assistant who lives like under a box outside.
Maybe?
Probably not. I should have found.
Maybe you just get paid in like food and board.
Yeah, I basically live at the jail, but I'm not a prisoner.
Except I don't make any money, so I can't leave. But it's totally fine.
Technically, I'm not in jail. Sort of.
Like I said, from the 1960s, you could go and visit the jail.
Mm-hmm.
Which is exactly what paranormal investigators started doing from about 2004.
Okay.
And noticed some very strange goings on.
Did they indeed? Gonna get a little spooky.
We've gotten to the spooky stuff.
Gonna get a little spooky.
And I have some interesting offerings for you this week.
Okay.
I actually have a fair bit of evidence to discuss with you, because when I tell you there is no shortage of tours and opportunities to go and investigate Jedburgh for yourself, I'm not exaggerating. There are so many groups that you can tour this place with, it's unreal.
That's fun.
Like multiple, I can't even tell you them all because I kept finding new ones. So many.
Mm-hmm.
So you can shop around for whatever you want. Any experience you want. You can do overnights. All kinds of stuff.
Ooh.
We didn't have time to go to the other end of the country.
No, slightly too far away for us, sadly.
Unfortunately, with the time that we had before this season, we couldn't make it down to Jedburgh because it's too far. Unfortunately.
Too damn
love
far.
to go.
Yep.
But I think because there's so many people doing paranormal investigations there specifically, the result of that has been a lot of audio and video evidence.
That's true.
More than we would normally have to bicker over.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you don't get as much, I say hard evidence, but you don't have as much things that people are presenting as things they've recorded that are strange. It's just stories and anecdotes about what they felt and experienced while they were there.
Well, that's the thing. When it's someone saying they had a really spooky experience, you can only take that at face value. Like, oh, okay.
And I have a fair bit of that for you, but I also have some like audio and video and photo and all kinds of stuff.
Exciting. We will link in the description below.
Yes, if you want to look at things yourself, we will have that for you.
Yes.
And you can tell us what you think, because I love hearing what people think.
Hell yeah.
Because we often have very differing opinions, so I like hearing how other people think.
Me and you? No. Not differing opinions, not about ghost evidence.
I mean, you're the one who's seen a ghost now, so you're our resident expert.
Have I, though?
Yes!
I'm not so sure.
Well, agree to disagree. I'd like to start off telling you a bit about the identities of two of the ghosts that are supposedly haunting the jail.
Okay.
And then some of the things that people have experienced while they've been there.
Can I put a guess in?
No, because you're just going to... wreck it.
It's a valid guess.
It's never a valid guess.
Alexander, okay, King Alexander, whose story you told at the start of the episode. He's got to be one of the ghosts.
No, actually.
He who saw death and rode off a cliff.
No. Rode off a cliff in Fife.
That's true.
Not Jedburgh. There's a memorial to him, his fall at Kinghorn. No, King Alexander is not one of the reported ghosts seen at the jail.
Oh, man.
Unfortunately.
I thought it was such a good guess.
It was. Just wrong. Firstly, we have a man called Edwin MacArthur. Now, Edwin was a very bad boy.
Oh, yeah?
Got himself locked up in Jedburgh Castle Jail.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently. I was tearing my hair out trying to find some proof that this man existed and he was at the jail. I couldn't find it digitally. I feel like I would have to go to Edinburgh to some kind of archive or to the jail itself.
Oh, yeah.
Look at the prison records. I couldn't find it online. I couldn't get it. I tried so hard.
What are you going to do?
Anyway, Edwin, I couldn't find any records about his life or imprisonment. That's not to say that it's false. I just couldn't find them. But the story goes that he was held at the prison and he was executed there in 1855.
Okay.
Like I said, a very bad boy.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know why he was held there, but he was executed for it.
Mm-mm.
People attribute lots of things to Edwin, and people claim to have sort of made contact with Edwin, confirming that it's him. It's all negative. It seems like if he is there, he's quite nasty.
Okay.
People feel threatened, uneasy. Some visitors have talked about a darkness, and I'm assuming that's a physical darkness, like a dark spot.
Yeah, rather than like a feeling of darkness.
And a lot of people believe that this is him hanging around. This feeling of unease and not being welcome and all kinds of horrible stuff. I know this is super vague, but I feel like I've definitely experienced, and not paranormal, but you get a feeling when something's just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Something isn't right. You're in a bad spot. You get a feeling. I know what that feels like.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if someone's describing that, I know what they mean.
I know when you've had that feeling before, because your intuition is much more intuitive than mine is.
I'm not talking about ghosts.
No.
If you're out somewhere and you just get the feeling, we shouldn't be here, we need to leave.
You get the bad vibes.
Mm-hmm. Something's not right. Something about where we are and who we're with isn't right. We need to go. I recognize that feeling.
Yes.
So if someone says that they had that, I believe them.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And then if it's happening in an old spooky jail, it's just spooky.
Yeah.
Spooky.
Yeah. So I know it's vague, but I find it reasonably compelling.
Yeah.
The other ghost that people talk about, although not as much as Edwin MacArthur, which is a shame because I found so much proof, because Thomas Wilson existed.
Oh.
I found the records. This was big for me. I found them. I found the trial records.
He was a real person?
Yes, and he was executed after being held at Jedburgh Castle Jail.
Okay.
Thomas is more interesting. I think you're going to like what I have for you here.
Hit me.
He was 23 when he was charged with, quote, mobbing and rioting and assault to the danger of life and murder, unquote.
Mobbing and rioting?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
There was a recommendation for mercy attached to his trial records, but this was not followed through with.
Harsh.
Yeah, judging by the trial records that I saw, Thomas had a rough go of it.
Yeah.
He was accused with 15 other men in one record.
Makes sense.
The youngest being 18 and the eldest being 30.
Mm-hmm.
And basically there was this riot in Kelso at a fair.
Okay.
That resulted in a farmer being murdered.
Oh, no.
Because he tried to step in and stop it, and he was killed.
Oh.
So all of these men were taken in and accused, him and 15 others. But in another record, it's just him and 2 other men who are actually going to trial, I believe.
Interesting.
So it seems like the other men with the other charges were dismissed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why there's the 2 different records with 2 different numbers.
That makes sense. I did wonder how you could mob and riot by yourself. So, makes sense.
Right. Along with Thomas, there were the 2 other men, John Brady, who was 24, and Peter Laverty, who was 30. And I think they were all tried at once because all the trials began on October 4th, 1849.
Okay. So either at the same time or at least one after the other.
Yeah. It makes sense they were all tried together because
Yeah.
they were all charged with the same things.
Well, that's just it.
Peter Laverty was found guilty of mobbing and rioting, but not the other things. So he was sentenced to transportation for 14 years.
I didn't know you could come back once you were transported.
Mhm.
I thought it was a one-way ticket.
It depended. Sometimes you could be transported for life,
Interesting.
but in other occasions like this one, it was a sentence.
Yeah.
So many years, and then you can come back if you choose to.
Damn.
I don't know if he came back. I don't know when he was sent away, but that was his sentence.
That's interesting.
John Brady was found guilty of the lot.
Mhm.
So mobbing and rioting, assault, murder, and he was sentenced to death by hanging.
Yes.
His execution was set for the 25th of October, 1849. And Thomas Wilson was also found guilty of all these things and was also sentenced to hang on the 25th of October.
Back to back.
Now, mercy was recommended for both of them, like I'd said.
Yep.
On the 10th of November, a remission of sentence was granted for John Brady.
Oh, not the other guy.
So John Brady didn't hang, but Thomas did. And it seems like he was the only one.
The only one out of the whole mob.
And after the fact, it seems that they found out that he was innocent
That's a shame.
and he hadn't done any of it.
Cheddar justice, am I right?
Kinda, yeah. But he did go to trial.
Oh yeah, I guess he did have a trial, didn't he? But on the 10th of November, that was after the hanging date.
Well, that's when the execution was set. Doesn't mean that it actually happened on that day. That's what
Oh.
they planned.
Got you.
And I'm not sure when Thomas was actually executed.
Mm-hmm.
Because it might have been the 25th, it might not have been.
Ooh.
But John Brady didn't hang on the 25th, like had been sentenced.
Mhm.
And he was effectively pardoned on the 10th of November.
Well, that's a rough go. I could see that leaving you as a restless spirit.
Well, it gets worse.
Oh, it gets worse.
According to True Crime Library, Thomas's execution didn't go smoothly.
Uh-oh.
Quote, the executioner was John Murdoch, now over 80. He arrived on the scaffold with the aid of a stick, failed to put the white hood over the condemned man's head properly, and pulled the lever too quickly. It was the last execution to be held at Jedburgh. Unquote.
Oh my God. There's a lot to unpack there. So they got this apparently quite senile old man.
I didn't say he was senile, just that
okay,
he's
so-
infirm,
Okay, infirm old man.
because he needed a stick to get up onto the scaffold.
Yeah, and then he obviously wasn't very mobile with his hands.
Mm-hmm.
But then,
So they didn't put the head over him properly.
yeah,
So what I take that to mean was the hood came off.
that's what I'm assuming.
So he could see everything and everyone could see him. That's the first thing,
Yep, as you're gently spinning there, slowly choking to death.
because I'm assuming his neck didn't break.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming as well. If it was done too early. Yeah, well, even then, there's going to be a surprise.
Mhm.
On the count of 3 and it goes on 1.
Now, my worry, I guess, not that it really changes anything, but my worry is what if they pulled the lever before he had a chance to say his last words?
That's what I was just wondering.
Or before he got I think they did last rites and things before they reached the scaffold, to be fair, but usually they let them say one last thing.
Yeah, it's...
How quickly was too quickly?
Well, if it's done early, it suggests something was missed. Which might leave you rather annoyed.
It's not good.
It's not good. Eee,
Mm-hmm.
that's tough.
Gnarly.
And that was the last one.
Yeah, seems to be.
Oh my God. They just did such a hack job of it. They're like, we should move this somewhere else.
Because this was 1849 and the jail closed in 63, I believe. Well, yeah, that's Thomas Wilson. And the part from True Crime Library, I can't confirm that. That's my
Mhm.
source for this last part. But the trial records are legit.
Mhm.
He existed. He was sentenced to hang. He was the only one of this mob that actually received execution.
Yeah. He died for it.
And he was 23, 24.
Rough.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's a ghost now,
Well,
is he?
to me, that seems like the perfect setup for a haunting, because an innocent man suffers a horrendous execution, being
Yep.
punished for something he didn't do. You're going to haunt someone. Anyone.
You're going to be pissed.
Anyone you can get your hands on.
Yep.
You're getting haunted. You're getting haunted. Everyone's getting haunted.
Can you get your hands on someone if you're a ghost?
It's probably a question for another time, eh? A lot to unpack there.
There is.
Now, I found more evidence of Thomas's life, but I couldn't find as many examples of spooky activity at the jail that people directly attribute to him.
Well, that's it, isn't
People
it?
talk about Edwin more.
Mm-hmm. Which I feel is very typical of these things. The person who there's no genuine real life record of, it's definitely him. Like, oh, what about this actual person who died horribly and unjustly? Do you think it might be him? Nah, it couldn't be him. That's much too grounded in fact.
If we went, I would want to try and talk to Thomas.
Thomas, do you know there's a tank engine named after you? That's what I'd ask him.
Oh, obviously. It's definitely what you'd ask him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I tell you people have experienced all kinds of things, I really mean it. Anything you can imagine related to a haunted place, people have felt it or heard it here.
Got it.
And it creeped me out quite a lot, reading about it all and hearing about it all, I'll be honest.
Give me a flavour. What have you got?
Well, the male cell block seems to be particularly nasty. People feel awful in there, and that cell block isn't open to the general public.
Wow.
If you go on a paranormal night, a paranormal investigation, usually you're allowed in, but day to day, the public aren't allowed in there.
Interesting.
Because the conditions aren't as great.
Mm.
But people feel awful in there. It feels really oppressive. They feel dread, fear. They see shadows, shadow figures a lot, footsteps that people are in there when there's no one. It's just you. People feel threatened. They hear doors banging, which is significant because they're the big steel doors.
Yeah, it's a big heavy jail cell door.
So that would be a hell of a bang.
That would be.
But the worst thing was a woman had her fingers broken in the hinge of a cell door.
Oh.
Because it was pushed shut on her.
Ooh.
When no one else was there.
Oh. That would be so painful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
And they don't know what happened because the doors, they're so heavy, they can't really move on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can fall shut on their own, I think, because they have weight, but you'd need someone to push it.
Yeah, they'd get a bit of momentum once they were going.
Yeah.
Well, that's rough.
Yeah.
Just because that'd be really painful.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not a ghost did it, that is just awful.
Mm-hmm. So that's the male cell block, and there's the Bridewell block, I think is the name of the other one, which was more for petty crime, and women were held there. Women and children were held there.
Oh, yeah.
But people hear and see all kinds of things there too, across the whole building. People have seen strange lights that they can't explain. One thing that comes up over and over again in lots of the reports and accounts that I read and watched, people hear conversation.
That would be odd.
When there's no one in the building, they hear like a low murmured chatting. It's the weirdest thing. And lots of people are reporting the same thing. It's really low, they can't make it out, but it sounds like people are talking in another part of the building.
That's interesting.
One of the jail's managers spoke about it. He's heard it himself. He had to go and check that there were no guests or visitors in the building before he locked up because he could hear people talking.
Well, because he'll definitely be there by himself, won't he?
And he has to make sure no one else is left there because he's locking it for the night. But yeah, they hear that all the time, which is really creepy.
That is really creepy.
Especially because everyone's reporting the same thing. And no one can hear it well enough to hear what's being said, but it sounds like conversation.
How strange.
People hear screams, whistling, banging, as you'd expect. People are touched by unseen hands. They have pebbles thrown at them. It's creepy.
That's the full menu.
I'm not even done. People have had their hair stroked.
Ew.
That's what I thought. That would mess me up.
Yeah.
Someone just very gently stroking your hair.
Blech.
Don't like it. Don't like it. there's a phantom piper. Because are you even in Scotland if there's not a ghost piper? Don't think
true.
so.
Mm-mm.
But he's been heard on and seen on the battlements. So like the outer ring of the jail rather than the cells.
I feel that's kind of confusing it with being an actual castle.
Well, I don't really know what to make of that because there wouldn't be a piper.
Because why would you pipe to prisoners?
So I feel like that one could be someone who's heard pipe music
Yeah.
and then gone, must be a ghost piper. This is a castle.
Pipe music can carry far.
Yeah, it's so loud.
Like if somebody's just practicing, like there's a piper practicing in their house or in their garden, you will hear that a while round.
That's why it was a war instrument.
Yeah, especially if it like carries on the wind or something.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know about that one.
No, that's a strange one to me.
Mm-hmm. Some people have claimed to see the same ghost that King Alexander III saw at his wedding.
Your skeleton man.
Mm-hmm. So not King Alexander himself,
No.
like you hoped, but the skeletal veil, the omen of death. People claim to see them.
What a good prank that would be.
Top tier ghost if you do see it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That ghost has historical credentials.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be creepy as hell.
Creepy as hell. Arm goes up, grabs the cloak of the head, throws it off, and there's nothing there.
Ooh. Or just falls to the ground.
Oh, even better.
Just stops existing. What?
You see it crumple and then it's gone.
What? One of the paranormal investigation teams I watched, which we're going to discuss in a bit, actually had the name Alexander come through on one of their devices, which would be pretty creepy.
That would be creepy.
Quite unsettling.
A good historical tie there.
But a funnier thing that I saw and read happening across multiple investigations is how often people get really bad swearing and cursing on their equipment.
That's funny.
Multiple different groups, not just one. Haunted Adelaide Horizons asked the ghosts why they crushed that woman's fingers that I told you about. And we're going to have to bleep this probably, but they called her. As in, like, that's why they did it. They asked if she was annoying them and they called her.
Oh, is it valid then at that point? You know, if she was?
Well, to me, like, is that the most Scottish ghost we've ever heard of? Because I think it might be.
I think it might be. Because the C word, it is used differently in Scotland. It is a lot more casual.
I still don't really like it.
A lot of people don't.
I don't like using it. But that's what they got. And one of the things that they talked about in the article they wrote on their website, which I'll leave links for, was just, like, you wouldn't get that on the radio.
No, that's true.
Because people, you don't use that word.
Not on the radio.
You don't use that word other than with your dearest friends.
Yes, unless it's
Scotland.
meant affectionately. Strangely.
So yeah, you just wouldn't get that on the radio.
Yeah.
So that was one of their things they were confused by. And loads of people get like really bad cursing, swearing.
That's interesting because my first thought was like, oh, well, you would get a lot of that at a jail, but not a silent jail.
No.
So there's no, I don't even know what it would be, residual memory of
weird.
People shouting swears.
But even me, on the like basis of what you can see, that's multiple groups getting the same thing, but not identically each time.
That is compelling. It's interesting.
And another thing that lots of teams have had is equipment failing.
Oh yeah.
Super common. Like the batteries drain really quickly. Just equipment doesn't operate right. Usually the explanation is that ghosts are draining the battery. I can't speak to that, but lots of them just have batteries dying immediately as soon as they enter. I've seen it happen a few times in the male cell block.
Oh yeah.
They enter and within like a few minutes, the batteries have completely died.
Is that the bit that's usually closed off to the public?
Yes.
If it's usually closed off to the public, it would be colder. And if it was colder, that would drain your battery.
But paranormal teams are in there all the time.
Not as often as people are in the rest of it, though.
But still, it's not abandoned.
Yeah.
And I don't think it'd be any colder than the rest of the building, surely.
Depends how like closed off it is.
Big stone building. It's going to be cold everywhere.
It's going to be pretty cold everywhere, which would lead to your battery dying faster.
Yes.
Mr. Skeptic over here, ruining the party.
Well, I'm glad that you're a skeptic. I like that we have a differing opinion. Now, I watched a whole buttload of evidence about
Yes.
this place to talk about. And I made Kieran watch one paranormal investigation video
I did watch it.
of the jail. I made him so we could talk about it. But I can tell you about the ones that I watched that you didn't.
Yes, please.
Um,
What did you see? What's the
Well,
highlights?
It was a bit tricky. I got you to watch the most compelling. Some of them were a bit dire. And I'm not going to drop names because that's not nice.
That's no fun.
I wasn't hugely compelled by a lot of the evidence I saw.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the time it's a scary place because it's an old jail that looks like a castle.
It's as we said for the prisoners, it's a very imposing building.
It's very creepy. Lots of people claiming that they were hearing voices, steps, tapping.
Mm-hmm.
But I struggle with taps because it's an old building. But
Yeah.
one of the videos I watched made the good point that it's an old stone building. So not as much settling as you'd get with a wooden structure.
That's true enough. But there's still all the doors. It's full of birds.
Yeah, lots of birds. There was a couple of people who got voices on their spirit boxes,
Mm-hmm.
which were Scottish voices, which made it a bit more compelling, but you'd also be tuned into Scottish radio.
That's what I wanted to know, because the video that I watched as well, they got a Scottish accent. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. You don't usually get that. But a spirit box is supposed to, it scans really quickly through radio stations, and then the spirits can like use that to say words, make the words come through. So if it was local radio stations, there would be Scottish accents.
Yeah. So
But-
I was kind of on the fence.
So it kind of, you need more information about their specific devices.
In one of the videos I watched, they spoke to one of the women who works at the jail.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if she's still there now. I won't give her name just in case she's not. But she was talking about her and a colleague who, I don't know if she saw it herself, but her colleague definitely did, was watching CCTV as
Mhm.
people were visiting the castle during the day.
Yep.
And they were keeping an eye on how many people were in certain places and, you know, the usual stuff.
Mhm.
And they were watching as this guy and his two children went into one of the parts of the jail. They had just admitted them, given them their tickets. But the woman who was watching the CCTV saw a man with 3 children. So I was like, oh, well, we need to make sure they all come out again. Because it's towards the end of the day, we're going to lock up.
Mm-hmm.
But as they were watching, she was sure that they'd only given tickets to 1 man and 2 kids.
Yep.
Waiting for 3 to come out again to make sure a child doesn't get locked in the cell block.
Don't want that to happen.
But only a man and 2 children came out again. And there was
Interesting.
no one on the CCTV when the building was empty.
Oh.
But they were sure Odin's chasing a fly. But they were sure they saw a man and 3 children.
Now that's pretty creepy, isn't it?
So there was a child unaccounted for that was following them around the cell block.
Mm-hmm. Were they able to replay it or anything?
Not for this ghost show, no. But they reported it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it creeped me out.
That is creepy. That is creepy.
A lot of the paranormal teams were using SLS cameras.
Oh, yes.
And I want to know what you think about SLS.
So my understanding is the SLS tracks movement. So they often, if you're filming an area using an SLS and somebody's standing there, it like shows a kind of stick figure of their like points of movement.
Mm-hmm.
So then,
It picks up on humanoid shape.
yeah. So then if there's nobody standing there and it picks up a humanoid shape, it could be picking up movement from a ghost, is the thought.
Mm-hmm.
Which to me makes much more sense than the spirit box, because to talk through a spirit box, you would need to know what was going to be said to then have it say independently of everything else that's scanning through it.
But I guess the argument is that a spirit could manipulate the static or like the radio noise that you're hearing their voice.
Ah, I see. I thought it was that they like pause, kind of like Bumblebee from Transformers. They like pause it so a bit plays for longer and you hear the word being said by the person on the radio station.
I mean, I don't know. I'm
Don't really
not an
know.
expert by any means, but I think it's the idea they manipulate the radio signal
Yeah.
to
Same with
say what they want to say.
there's a device called an ovulus, which has pre-programmed words and it measures like atmospheric things that correlate to those words. So that
I don't know how they correlate.
And for that to make sense, the spirit would have to know how to get the word said. Because, if it's knock once for yes and twice for no, it then knows once for yes and twice for no. But if it's make the frequency plus temperature plus humidity equal 7, then it says Alexander. The ghost would have to know that to get it to say to be able to say what it wants to say.
But what do you think about SLS then?
So then SLS kind of makes sense, because if there's movement, like movement's just movement. If
I think it
there's
has like
something
a
there-
laser grid type thing.
Yeah.
It fires out a laser grid, and that's how it picks up on the movement. So it's physical movement
Mhm.
that interrupts the path of these lasers.
I think so, yeah.
I
So
think.
that makes sense to me, because the ghost doesn't have to do anything more than exist for you to be able to see it there,
It just has to move,
if there is something there to be seen.
take on physical form.
So that makes a lot more sense to me, because then it's not having to learn how to do something to communicate to you. It just has to be there and you see it, I think.
Well, people have picked up figures on SLS cameras at Jedburgh.
It's interesting.
Was my original point. People have used that and seen figures, which kind of ties in with people who believe that they've seen shadow figures.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of ties into that, backs that up.
Well, it'd be quite interesting to have somebody not looking at the screen and then somebody else see a figure and have them like tie together.
Mm-hmm. So providing evidence and backing up a report in multiple ways. Now, I got you to watch the investigation by Amy's Crypt.
Yes.
Amy and Jared of Amy's Crypt. They visited Jedburgh Castle Jail.
Yes.
Now, I felt like they got some pretty good nuggets of evidence.
You think? Mm-hmm.
There were some things that I saw, and we'll leave a link, you can watch it yourselves. I thought it was interesting. And one of the things I found interesting was just them experiencing what so many other people have.
Yeah, that's true. If you've seen the same evidence crop up before, but it's cropping up again in a similar fashion, that is quite interesting.
Like, they were the ones that got Alexander coming through on their equipment, which I thought was intriguing.
Yeah, that is quite intriguing.
Because they didn't know the story, which initially annoyed me, because I would have to know that before I went somewhere.
Well, yeah, with you researching as you do.
But equally, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't come across it and you've done the research, how are you going to know that's a thing?
How are you going to know? It was quite an interesting video. I enjoyed watching it. I liked their style. I think they could use a skeptic, but as a skeptic, I would say that.
You need me.
Yeah, to just kind of cut through the fear, because you're somewhere, they're Australian, so you're somewhere new in a foreign country at night in a castle that was a jail where people died.
I would struggle with that. I would get caught up in my fear and my hype if I didn't have you just ripping into me all the time.
Yeah, like that would be scary. I think even I'd be scared, because that's situationally,
it's creepy.
That's a creepy place to be.
And throughout the video, I could hear there were lots of noises and bumps and all kinds of things, which would be unsettling.
Yeah.
I get that completely. I was interested, they spoke to the manager of the jail.
That was really interesting.
And he told the story of someone who was on a paranormal investigation, who was standing on one of the upper floors, looked down through a ventilation grate and saw someone in like an old frock walk underneath them.
Now that would be pretty creepy.
That's one of the most awful things I've ever heard that I cannot get out of my brain.
Yeah.
Because I can just imagine it happening, and it's awful. It's like something out of a horror movie. Like standing over this grate, you can see down, and you just see someone walk past who shouldn't be there.
Yeah, just someone just swoosh past underneath, and then you look at everyone else who's there, who's beside you, going, "Hang on, who is down there?"
Awful.
Yeah, that would be awful.
But they got lots of feedback on what I'm assuming is like an ovilus. Like they got lots of words fired at them through their investigation.
Yeah, it seemed to be an app called Ghost Tube. Not one I'm familiar with.
They had execution come through.
Yeah.
Which was intriguing, or executed, one of the two. They got to meet the stray cat that wanders around the prison. All haunted places should have a cat. Just saying.
It really adds to the mystery.
I think it would be comforting. Although they did say in the video that this cat is known for like biting people.
Biting people.
But then I thought it was interesting because later they got bite on their equipment.
That's what I had. I was like...
They didn't make the connection in their video, but I thought it and just went,
I was almost shouting at it because they got something came through, said they were going to get... They need to be careful. Oh, why? Bite. And they were like, why would we be getting bitten? I'm like, because there's a stray cat who bites
That cat's
people.
an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a wee dick of a cat out there who's known to bite people who try and pet him.
They experienced cold spots on their investigation, which I struggle with.
It's going to be full of cold spots. It's an old castle.
Like it's an old stone building.
Yeah.
We have that in our house. It's not nearly that old, but it's stone. It's cold. It just gets cold.
Yeah.
And depending on where you are in the house, some parts are particularly cold compared to others. Don't like that. But they use the cat toys like we talked about Highland Paranormal using last episode.
Well, I think I missed that part of the video. I was just tuned out.
Zone out.
Yeah, I was just like, ugh.
This was hard for you because it goes against your entire belief system.
It was tough going.
Even though you've seen a ghost. But they used the cat toys and they were lighting up and they were filming and you could see no one was touching them.
Yeah.
I would love to get one of these toys myself and see how it works.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I would definitely do it, but they're so small Odin would just swallow them. Because he's that type of dog.
Would we see them flashing through his belly? Like when
Takes a dump at the bottom of the garden and the lights are just flashing in the middle of the night.
Like when you put a torch to your hand and you can like see the light coming through. Just see that through his belly.
Oh, I don't even want to take the risk.
No.
He's eaten 3 dish sponges in his life. I'm not taking the chance on a cat toy.
No.
But I thought it was interesting that they were using the same technique.
Yeah, I like that.
And they got some feedback.
It's interesting. Spooky place. I'd love to go and see it.
I tell you what I do like, which Amy and Jared used in their investigation in the video, is the Estes method.
Oh, yes.
To explain, it's a version of the spirit box where someone is plugged into the white noise with noise-cancelling headphones and all they can hear is the static and the radio. Can't hear anything else. And then you have someone who stands a bit away who is asking questions and trying to get some kind of response. And the person who is completely zoned in on the headphones just says what they hear.
Yeah.
So they can't hear the questions, they can only hear the radio. I like that a lot.
It definitely gives more weight to it. So then one person asks questions, and if they get answers relative to what they asked, it's a lot more unbiased.
Because the person, if they're being completely honest, can't hear what's being asked.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. As a method.
And they got repeated cursing.
They did actually.
When they did that, which I found intriguing.
It's a man and a woman, and at one point, the woman who has the headphones on just shouts "tits out," and he goes, "Me or her? That's inappropriate. Is it gentleman? That is not gentlemanly."
No, it is not.
Which I thought was funny.
What was creepy though, it gave me goosebumps while I was watching it. I don't know if you picked up on it at all. When they're doing the Estes method, one of the things that she says when she's plugged in is, "Your head won't bounce."
Oh yeah.
I didn't like that at all.
That was quite what's the word? A very like image heavy thing to say.
Threatening, I felt.
Which goes in with a lot of the anger you were saying.
Yeah, and they were in the part of the building, the male cell block, where people feel threatened and don't feel good. I didn't like it.
Yeah, that was a creepy one. Ew.
So before I get into the ghost photos, Kieran, what did you make of the investigation, the video evidence that I sent you?
It didn't do much for me. I wasn't hugely compelled by the things they captured. There was a few little like taps and thuds and things, but it just seems like old building noise to me.
That's fair. I was interested to hear what you made of it.
Yeah. Nothing jumped out at me as going like, ooh, that's quite unusual.
I wish I knew more about their equipment that gave the words. Because some of the words that they came up with were connected, I felt, to the history of the place.
Yeah.
I would love to know more about the equipment.
Well, that's the thing with the like Ovilus-esque device that said Alexander. Like Alexander will be pre-programmed into it. Like what are the chances it says Yolanda, like his wife? Because that's a much Like, that was the first time hearing that word today, that name.
Yolande.
Or Yolande.
But then what are the chances it says Alexander? That's
So,
very specific.
Yeah, it is very specific.
Executed less so.
Mm-hmm.
But like a name
Yeah, and a
and
name.
a related name?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I was intrigued.
Need to know more about the hardware.
And I was creeped out.
Yeah.
So there are several ghost photos that I found that were taken at Jedburgh, and we're going to close out the episode with these.
Sounds good to me.
The first one we have was taken by Spirit UK, SPIRIT, from back in 2021. So fairly recent. They were investigating the castle, and when they were looking back at their pictures, they struggled to explain what they saw in one of them.
Okay.
I'm going to show you the photo in a minute, and we'll have them linked. The whole team are in this photo, so it's not one of them that's unaccounted for. They are all in view. And the photo, from what I read, it was taken after they had investigated.
Okay.
And I read the article from Lancashire Live, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They spoke to Joanne Elwood, who's part of the group. And here's what she said.
Hit me.
As far as I'm concerned, it's a shadow of a person. We did the investigation first, and although we got a few spirit voices and we could hear a few slamming doors in the prison, there was nothing obvious. We also started to hear what sounded like men and occasionally women talking in a quiet murmur, which persisted for the rest of the evening. That's it again.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
I wonder if that's a bit of like infrasound, like we've talked about.
Maybe. I'd be so curious because it's interesting whether or not it's paranormal that people are getting the same thing.
Yes.
I would love to know, and I would love to go and see if I could hear it.
Yeah, worth further investigation.
Because I don't know if it's, well, they're hearing ghosts, or they expect to hear murmuring because everyone hears murmuring, so they heard murmuring.
Oh, it's so hard to say, isn't it?
If it was a pigeon, like doing that cooing.
Oh, yeah.
The low cooing noise. She went on. They have a lot of mannequins in there, and
Yes.
they do. It's creepy as fuck. Watch the video. They're awful. I hate mannequins.
Yeah, me too.
Of any kind. I hate them. They are usually in the cells, and there was a cardboard cutout. So we thought, we'll go and check it out, but there's absolutely nothing that could have created that shadow. We didn't get there until about 8 p.m, so this was about 9 p.m, and it was still light. There was nothing there that could have cast the shadow. I'm not going to say, oh, that's a ghost. It's just an interesting photo that was really hard to explain.
I like that attitude.
Yeah, just, it was odd. And they checked it out and they couldn't account for it. So I'm going to show you the full photo and then the zoom in
Oh,
of the
okay.
interesting part.
We do a Spooker Spoof series on Patreon that's very similar to this.
Yes, so
Analysing ghost evidence.
we release one a month.
Heave.
So tell me what you think.
Okay, here's the regular photo. There's a little... Oh, that's a cannon in front of the sign. It looks kind of like a person sitting there. There's something in like a window, maybe? A couple of little things in windows, which might be mannequins. But I don't know specifically what should be there. I'm gonna go.
Well, if you scroll down, you'll get to the zoomed in image with the shadow in question.
Oh, I see. That's not at all where I was looking. I'm going to have to scroll up again. So it's to the right of the castle, kind of behind a sort of iron grate.
Yes, there's a black iron gate to the right of the photo. And they noticed a shadow behind it that shouldn't have been there.
That's a shadow person. That is exactly how you would describe that, isn't it?
They went and looked. It wasn't there in other photos. It wasn't there when they went up to check. The way that the light was hitting, apparently it shouldn't have cast a shadow like that. They can't explain it.
You can definitely see a shadow of like a head, a body, and legs.
It's figure shaped.
Yeah. But it could be a shadow.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
That's the hard part.
You kind of have to take them at their word. Because by the sounds of things, they went and looked and it was odd. Everyone's in the photo that was there that night. So, tricky to tell.
Yeah, I think I agree with the woman you were quoting. That's an interesting photo.
But it could be just, it's a trick of the light and it looks like a figure, so you make a figure of it.
Well, yeah, you want it to be a figure.
It's hard. But I appreciate her saying that, like, to me, like, it looks like the shadow of a person. But I can't say it's a ghost. It's just weird.
It's just weird.
So that's number 1.
Number 1.
And I've ordered these in order of how interested and weirded out I was by each of them.
How many do we have?
3.
Excellent.
I think I just said 1 of 3.
Maybe you did. You're not listening again.
Number 2.
Number 2.
Utah.
Give me 2.
We have a photo taken by a man called David Forrest, which was featured in an article by the Daily Record, which is not my favourite source, believe me, but that's just what it is.
Yep.
David visited Jedburgh Castle Jail in 2019, and he believes that he managed to take a picture of one of the ghosts.
Okay.
He said, "We were in cell 4, and I'm assuming this is the men's cell block. But I'm not sure. He doesn't clarify. Using investigation equipment, including a spirit box, which is like a modified radio that transmits spirits' voices. We heard a woman's voice saying cell 8. We rushed to cell 8. I was panning around with the camcorder and taking photos when I spotted the ghost. It was just staring at me through the camera."
That sounds disgusting.
So he's seeing this in real time and has taken a photo of what he saw.
Great.
I was shocked. I said to others in the team, "Look at this." And we were all standing there looking at the ghost through the viewer. I've never heard of that happening before.
No. We talk about that a lot.
He said, "Everyone was gasping. It makes the hairs on the backs of your neck stand on end." So by the sounds of things, he's blatting away in his camera and everyone is standing looking at the viewfinder. And they can see it, but they can't see it in real life.
I like the thought that if you were there, you would have turned to me and not said, "Come and check this out." You just gone.
Well, I find this intriguing because when we were just visiting some castles, I won't spoil later episodes, we were at castles and one of the things that we remarked on was, look at this oil painting through the viewfinder. Look how much more clearly you can see it.
Yeah, it did. The video on the camera we were using picked up a lot more of the light.
So
interesting.
This could be the same thing. So he shared one of the photos that he took. It's grainy. I won't lie to you, but it's kind of creepy, especially just with the knowledge that they were looking at this in real time.
Hit me
I will show it to you now. And I don't want to tell you too much about it.
Do.
That's a good sign.
To me, it looks kind of like a skull and a hood.
So when he was describing it as a cloaked figure and the face was looking directly at them, but they couldn't see it in person. Directly
at them. Okay, to me it looks like it's looking across to the right of the photo.
Okay.
Like to the side. I mean, it's pretty creepy.
It kind of looks like a face. I can see a face.
Kind of looks like a face. Very traditional ghost because it's white and black. It looks like he's taking a picture of the viewfinder.
Yeah, it's not a great picture.
But that's pretty weird.
But I'm wondering if it was a camcorder. Maybe it's a picture of like a frame of footage.
Oh yeah, maybe you paused it because there's a little like red something at the side of the screen. That made me wonder if it was he's holding the camcorder in his left hand and then taking a picture of the camcorder with his right hand.
Well, maybe that might be better evidence because then you're seeing the source of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I'm filming, we can only see it here. Here's a picture of what's happening. You know? But it's creepy.
It's pretty strange.
I don't like it.
It's pretty strange.
I can see a face.
Yeah, there's definitely like a face there.
And that always unsettles me. But it's all the accompanying story with it that also creeps me out.
You need the context.
I just standing around a camera looking at a face that isn't there.
Yeah,
don't like it.
That would weird you out, wouldn't it?
Don't like it.
Don't like that.
The final photo and the big finale of the episode.
Oh.
Because we've been here longer than we expected.
It has been a longie.
We've just rambled. I'm pretty spooked by this picture. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
It was taken a bit earlier. It was in 2019. The Border Telegraph published an article with this photo that seems to be a figure wandering in one of the cell blocks.
Okay.
Now, I'm especially intrigued by this photo because it was taken by a young boy who was visiting the jail and he was trying to take a selfie.
Nice.
But he missed himself.
Yep.
He wasn't trying to take a picture of a ghost. He was trying to take a picture of himself.
Love it.
On this tour.
That's some good compelling context.
The photo doesn't include the boy's face.
Good.
Otherwise, I don't think I would have shared it.
Mhm.
I don't like that. He's like missed himself over his shoulder,
Yeah.
but there's something behind him.
Well, I can imagine the thing when you turn just a regular camera around that doesn't have a front view in it.
Well, I think he had his dad's phone. I think he might have been there with his family and he was taking photos on his dad's phone because it's his dad that the Telegraph spoke to.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he just like kept the back camera on.
Yeah.
Or he was just holding his arms up and just taking lots of photos. You know, because he seems quite young. I think he was at primary school at the time. So
It's playing.
he just missed himself. His dad spoke to the Border Telegraph. I don't think they've shared their names, so I don't have a name for you. Here's what his dad said. I was clearing out photos on my phone when I took a second look at my son's attempted selfie. He'd missed himself, but he's taken a photo of something in the cell. It was chilling. I can't describe this as anything other than a floating apparition looking at us.
Okay, I'm excited.
It's really creepy.
I'm excited. I have the hype.
I don't like it. It's quite a long photo that I'm going to show you. So you might have to like scroll down a bit. But I've spun it down to the figure.
Yeah, hit me with the good bit.
You can see the boy's shoulder in his jacket.
Yes. Dun 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 dun. Hello. That is a cracking photo of a ghost.
That is really creepy.
That is really creepy.
So it's a pale figure.
Yeah, I can
looking
see
towards the camera.
a head, a body, jacket, arms, legs, black shoes.
The sort of the scale fits with a person.
Yeah, so it's out a door. Looks like across the hall and then into a door on the other side of the room. Is what it looks like to me, where the photo is. But in the door on the other side, there's a person standing there.
There's something there. And he didn't mean to take it.
Yeah.
So it's not that he was trying to take a picture of a ghost. Which I'm always more intrigued by.
Yes, absolutely. When it happens accidentally, it's much more compelling.
And people have like seen apparitions. They've seen figures.
It's like a Scooby-Doo quality ghost.
The guy who looked through the grate, he saw a figure in a dress, and that looks kind of dress-like at the bottom.
Oh, I'm getting a like jacket and trousers.
Oh yeah? Or maybe it's the movement. It looked kind of skirt-ish to me.
But it looks kind of like older fashion.
It looks like a person.
Like old-timey. It does look like a person.
It looks like a person.
And especially because, yeah, you can see he's not held the camera straight because he's a child. So no judgment there. But so it's a bit blurry, but yeah, it's kind of blurred past what really looks like a person.
And I would understand if the dad had sent this in, he might have cropped his son's face out of it. Like maybe he managed to get more of his face.
Ooh.
It's so creepy.
Uh-huh.
And it's super recent. It's not from like 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's not like an old black and white photo. There's no double exposure here.
It's assumedly some sort of smartphone from 2019.
Creepy.
In the middle of the day. Not by a paranormal investigator.
I think that's one of the most compelling photos we've ever looked at.
I think so, because it looks like a person.
Yeah.
I don't like it, Kieran. I don't like it at all.
Well, I don't have much to refute it.
You can see the blur in it because the camera's moving, and what looks like a figure is also blurred in the same way. Like all the blurring is directional, which has impacted the figure.
Could be either a person or one of the mannequins. They were saying there's a bunch of mannequins about the place.
Yeah.
But the kind of the coloring's wrong. Because they look a bit opaque and they're kind of grey.
Yeah. Like you can see kind of the wall behind them. Which I don't like.
Could just be a really unfortunate blurring of a bunch of objects that are there. They've all blurred together to be a person. But it's pretty spooky. Pretty spooky.
All in all, this is one of the creepiest places I've read about.
Yeah, I can see why we're doing this as part of our spookiest season to date.
This is creepy.
This is creepy. It's very creepy.
And the sheer amount of stuff that people are coming out with creeps me out.
Well worth a visit if you want a little spooking, it seems.
I mean, I want to go.
Hell yeah.
I want to go so bad. and then get there and be annoyed that I decided to come because I'm creeped out.
That is how it would go.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But that is the spooky story of Jedburgh Castle Jail.
Wow.
My love.
Wow. That was super interesting. And what a spooky place.
It was quite spooky heavy, I think. We were leaning more into the spook than the history this week.
But I think it worked perfectly. But you need the context for the spook to land.
Well, is it Edwin MacArthur? Thomas Wilson in the picture?
Then that would be
In the picture?
I'm going to say it was Thomas Wilson over Edwin MacArthur.
Because you know he's real.
Well, see, then maybe I should do Edwin MacArthur because it's not a real ghost and he wasn't a real person.
You just said that was compelling. You're just arguing with yourself. You're going to be constantly at war with yourself until you accept the fact that you saw a ghost. And we've talked about it on the podcast. Everyone knows. Everyone heard it.
I did see something. Don't think it was a ghost, though.
What else could it have been?
Trick of the light. My imagination.
I'm not arguing with you about this.
Well, apparently we should go because we're going to have words, I think. I don't want to have words.
Join us in the blether over on Patreon if you want to hear us have a Barney. It will be great, mostly.
It's going to be a good time. If you would like to support the podcast, consider following us on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. Consider leaving us a review. You can tell your friends about it. If there's an episode you think they'd like, send it out to them.
It's spooky season.
It's spooky season.
'Tis the season.
It's like 2 days before October starts. Or come and join us on Patreon.
We post lots of fun stuff.
Yes, we do. And you get early access to the episodes in this new season.
Guys, we posted a vlog for the first time.
We did.
Over on Patreon.
Mm-hmm. Now with video content.
This is big.
It's exciting.
We have never done that before.
Mm-mm.
So if you're only here for Odin, that's where you should be. Stop listening to the episodes. Get just over there.
He does feature heavily in the vlog.
Because he's cute.
Yep. As well as our trip to Castle.
Also, if you join the Patreon, 10% of the proceeds go to Trees for Life.
Yes.
We're planting trees in the Scottish Highlands. And you could be part of it.
So what are you waiting for? You should head over to patreon.com/generallyspooky.
What are you still doing here? God.
The episode's over.
God.
What are you doing?
Get on over there, you scamp.
Scamp. You scampy fry.
We appreciate you guys.
Yes. Thank you very much. And we will see you next week.